So I'm going to make a prediction about the upcoming Warhammer 3 DLC, Thrones of Decay, and that prediction is that it will be the best DLC yet for this game, and possibly for the entire franchise. Now that's a tall order, because there have been some really good DLCs already that expanded rosters, added compelling characters, and revamped faction mechanics for those that had gotten a little stale. I am expecting more of all of those things for the upcoming DLC, but that's not really what I'm focused on for this video. For one thing, we know that Games Workshop has a lot to say about what makes it into the game, and there's likely to be a lot of divergence between what fans envision and what Games Workshop does. Anyway, plenty of other creators have speculated on specific content, and as most of them are more familiar with the lore of Warhammer than I am, I'm happy to defer to their expertise. Instead, what I'd like to focus on is 3 big picture ideas, 3 reasons why I think we should expect great things from Thrones of Decay. As always, I'd like to hear your feedback. I've been accused of being overly optimistic before when it comes to this game, and maybe I am, but I do think in this case some optimism is justified. So let's dive right in. The first reason I predict Thrones of Decay will be really good is because Creative Assembly really needs a win. I'm sure just about everyone watching this video is aware of the missteps that have been made recently, particularly with the Shadows of Change DLC, which I still haven't bought by the way, but even going back further to the very launch of Warhammer 3, the disappointed reaction to the Realms of Chaos campaign, and the frustrating wait for Immortal Empires. I'm not going to rehash all of those missteps since there's plenty of content out there already dedicated to those topics. What I will say is this feels like a make or break moment for CA, and quite possibly the future of the Total War series writ large. Sega was not happy with their developer, CA has paid the price internally, and we've gotten to the point where it's put up or shut up time. Either CA continues to half-ass Warhammer 3 as they have been doing, and risk giving up on the future of the franchise, or they try as hard as they can to hit a home run with this, the first DLC to drop since the criticism came to a head. Because Warhammer Total War is still the big moneymaker, the cash cow for CA, I'm choosing to believe they will choose the second choice here. The precedent has been set before that even after a significant setback, players will flock back to a game if they see improvements being made and feel like new content provides good value. The cheaper prices of DLC are unfortunately a thing of the past, so the only alternative with respect to providing value is to have really good content, whether it's mechanics, units, characters, or some combination of all of the above. The way I see it, Thrones of Decay is going to go one of 3 ways. As I mentioned already, they could try the minimal cost-benefit approach, putting just enough content into the DLC to get a decent number of customers to buy it, deciding it's not worth the extra effort to put out a product that the more hesitant players would buy. I think we've seen CA try this approach before and get burned, but keep doing it anyway. So I have to admit it's always a possibility. I can't say with certainty that they won't do this again. But why do I believe this is not likely to be the case this time? We've seen CA vocally show at least a little acknowledgement of their past mistakes. It's a far cry from what I'd have liked to see from them, but it's a big gaming company and it's pretty unusual to see big gaming companies admit to massive failures. More importantly, actions speak louder than words, and we have the recent additional content added to Shadows of Change that show us CA is moving in the right direction. They could have cut their losses on that DLC entirely, so I think this is a good sign that they're putting forth more effort and heading in the right direction. So let's assume they do try hard to make this a worthwhile DLC. Well, there's still 2 ways that could go. First, they might make additions and add mechanics that fall flat. This is always a possibility. They clearly thought Realms of Chaos would be a big hit and seemed very slow to recognize its flaws or acknowledge that a lot of players either hated it or quickly grew bored. To me, this is a bigger concern, that they'll genuinely try to make a better product and still come away with a failure. But I do think their track record is more hit than miss. I've really liked a lot of the mechanics they've added to factions through the years, and I'm hoping they've learned enough lessons to get good input from people before committing to a faulty design. Which brings us to the third and best way this could go, which is the aforementioned home run. Plenty of content that the players enjoy. Alternatively, or maybe in addition, a good support plan to address concerns with more alacrity than they've shown in the past. I don't think it's too much to expect, because I believe this is where CA genuinely wants this DLC to land. That brings us to the next reason I think we can expect great things from Thrones of Decay, and that's that it's addressing 3 races who desperately need some love. Now, as many of you already know, I am a huge fan of Nurgle as it stands already. After all, this channel does have a Kugath campaign going on 40 hours long and still going strong. But that doesn't mean I don't think there's room for improvement. The Kugath tech tree was made for Realms of Chaos and never altered for Immortal Empires. In fact, most of the way a Kugath campaign in IE plays out shows it was more of an afterthought. Plagues, their key mechanic, don't spread in the Dragon Isles where they start. They can quickly get cooped up in their little archipelago by Helm and Gorst, against whom Nurgle's starting army is very poorly equipped. And considering the enemies that will declare war on you are in unsuitable climates, beating those first few enemies is pretty unrewarding. So there are definitely ways to improve the Nurgle experience. I don't know whether Kugath's campaign is going to get much love, I hope so, but at least there will be some options to play Nurgle if Kugath is too stale or uninteresting for you. I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with, and considering how unpopular Kugath is, this really feels like low-hanging fruit. Almost anything should have greater appeal to most players than the state of Nurgle at the moment. With the Empire, the mechanics around Imperial politics are a really good idea in principle, but in reality not exactly working in the best way possible. One can hope CA has looked at lessons learned and make a few tweaks to the system to make it more fun and less frustrating to engage with. While I personally don't tend to play human factions as much as the others, nothing against them, it's just that I'm a human in real life, so I tend to gravitate towards other races in fantasy. Very clearly the Empire is one of the more popular factions with players, and CA knows this, so I think they're likely to put a lot of focus on this one. And last but not least, the dwarfs are another of my favorites. Like Nurgle, I have a long-running dwarf campaign on this channel that's still going strong, and is actually the first ever campaign I uploaded to the channel. I'm probably in the minority here, but I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the dwarfs, but that also doesn't mean they can't be improved. My biggest gripe about the dwarfs, my grudge, if you will, okay, please don't hold that terrible pun against me, anyway, is that the legendary lords feel too similar. Other than their starting position, a Thorgrim campaign doesn't play out much differently than any of the other legendary lords. Sure, you can go thematic and put an all-Slayer army in Ungrim's army, but the difference between playing Karaza Karak versus Karak Kadrin is nothing like the difference between, say, Ikit Claw and Throt the Unclean. So a little diversity can go a long way here, too. I'm pretty curious to see what new mechanics they work up, and what, if any, changes any of the old legendary lords will see. As long as they don't make any major mistakes, this feels like it could be another easy win for CA. All of which brings us to the last reason I'm really looking forward to this DLC, and that is because we've recently entered the golden age of Warhammer modding. Not only is the modding community active and thriving, with some of the best mods we've ever seen for Total War coming out recently, CA has also seemed to embrace this aspect of their games, and even worked with some modders and released tools to make modding easier. It's a formula that other gaming companies, I'm looking at you Bethesda, have followed to great success. These mods provide fresh content, keep players interested in a game long past the usual life cycle, and even bring new players in years after a game's initial release. Whether we're looking at mods that expand the vanilla campaign map, like the aptly named Immortal Empires Expanded, or mods that give us an entirely new map and campaign like the Old World mod, or mods that tweak existing mechanics, or mods that add entirely new mechanics, or mods that add new units to existing factions, or mods that add entirely new factions, or cosmetic mods that change the look of units, the campaign map, the weather, the UI, you name it. Well, you get the idea. Whether you want to very slightly change the vanilla game or overhaul it completely, there are no shortage of options to keep you busy for a very long time. As always, I want to express my own gratitude to the modding community for the work they put into making this game even better. Alright, I think that's as good a place as any to leave this. I'll close by saying none of us should give CA a pass on some of the less than stellar decisions they've made in recent years, but even so, there are plenty of reasons to look forward to the next few years and onward. I think maybe we're due for a pleasant surprise. As always, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.